Welcome, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, depending on where you're joining us from. It's my pleasure to welcome you to the Global TechnoPolitics Forum's Roundtable on Artificial Intelligence, Innovation and Competition, held today, Tuesday, October the 15th, 2024. Please note that this session will be recorded and will follow the forum's webinar standards of conduct. Thank you once again for being here, and now I'll hand it over to Professor Treverton.
Hello, I'm Greg Treverton, chair of the Global Technopolitics Forum, and it is my great pleasure to introduce this panel discussion on AI innovation and governance, which will focus on geopolitics and regional dynamics, particularly in East Asia and especially in South Korea. This is a natural for the Global Technopolitics Forum. We've been working for about 5 years at the intersection of technology and global politics, geopolitics, great focus on internet and data governance. One of our main missions is fostering collaboration, like this panel discussion. I needn't say how important the topic of AI is. It's going to literally change our lives. I think at the end, it will change how we think about human cognition and maybe even think about how we think about humanity itself. There'll be wonderful things out there, but there are also pitfalls that we've only begun to understand. What we do understand is it's going to take collective action. We're going to have to cooperate. Even geopolitical rivals, like the United States and China, share an interest in making sure that the worst outcomes don't come to pass. Also, we've taken somewhat different approaches to AI, with the Chinese centralizing oversight and the United States decentralizing. So we might even learn something from each other. In any case, it is imperative that we work through the geopolitical hurdles and begin to do collective efforts to shape the future of AI. We are grateful to our sponsors, particularly the Pacific Century Institute, who made this panel possible, and to the University of Southern California. So let me thank them directly. And now, without further ado, let me turn the floor to my partner in this venture, the president of the Global Technopolitics Forum, Dr. Pari Esfandiari. Over to you, Pari.
Thank you very much, Greg. And hello, everyone. I want to extend a warm welcome to all of you, including our distinguished panelists, our amazing support team, and of course, all of you who have joined us today. It's wonderful to see such a diverse and engaged group here to discuss one of the most exciting and transformative topics of our time, artificial intelligence, or AI. We have a full schedule today. Please show the agenda on the screen. I will begin with a short presentation to set the context. Next, we will hear from our three distinguished panelists. To save time, I won't be introducing each speaker in detail, but their profiles will be displayed at the start of their interventions. Afterward, we will transition into roundtable discussion, followed by audience questions and answers, where you will have the opportunity to ask questions. We conclude with final reflections and closing remarks. Now, without further ado, let's begin. Could we start slide number 6, please? AI is not just a technology, but a truly transformative force. By 2030, it's expected to contribute $15.7 trillion to the global economy. That's a staggering amount. What makes AI so powerful is how it boosts productivity across industries, from automating processes to providing advanced decision-making tools that humans alone could not achieve as quickly or efficiently. But AI isn't just about creating faster systems or smarter applications. It's reshaping the workforce too. While it's creating high-skill tech jobs, it's also automating traditional roles, presenting both opportunities and challenges for the global labor market. The takeaway is clear. Leading in AI means leading the global economy. Countries and companies that lead in AI development will have a strategic economic advantage in shaping the future. Next slide, please. And this leads us to AI's role as a strategic asset. AI is not only about economic power, it's also reshaping the global leadership dynamic. AI helps shape industries and global standards, and it has a direct influence on trade competitiveness and military power. At the heart of the current US-China rivalry is the competition to dominate AI. China has set an ambitious goal of AI supremacy by 2030, while the US continues to lead in AI innovation through its world-class tech companies. This competition will determine who sets the rules for the next generation of technologies, even more, who leads the future. Next slide, please. But with great power comes great responsibility. AI brings ethical challenges and significant security concerns that we must address. There are three key issues we need to keep in mind: bias, privacy, and transparency. AI systems are only as good as the data they have trained on. If the data is biased, the AI will be too. Additionally, AI's dual-use nature, meaning it can be applied to both civilian and military uses, raises national security concerns. We are seeing AI integrated into cybersecurity, autonomous weapons, and even disinformation campaign. This is why governance and ethical standards are crucial to ensure AI benefits society without compromising security. Next slide, please. Let's now shift our focus to the private sector, which plays a critical role in driving AI innovation. Companies like Google, Samsung, Microsoft, and Alibaba are at the forefront of AI development. But it's not just about innovation. The private sector is also responsible for investment, research and development, and commercialization of AI technologies. Additionally, the private sector is key in scaling AI solutions, attracting top AI talent and collaborating with governments to create framework for ethical governance. This is where public-private partnerships come into play. They're vital to making sure AI is developed responsibly and rolled out effectively. Next slide, please. Now let's take a look at East Asia's geopolitical importance. It's a critical region in the global AI race. Why? Because East Asia is an economic powerhouse and a leader in technological innovation. China, Japan, South Korea, and Taiwan are all leading players in AI and tech. What is more, it has a strategic military importance. The region is not just about economic power, it's about national security, with AI playing a big role in both civilian and military technologies. Finally, it plays a critical role in geopolitical tension. The balance of power between the US and China is heavily influenced by the strategic moves these East Asian countries make, especially as they control critical technologies like semiconductors and AI infrastructure. This makes East Asia one of the most important regions in shaping the future of AI. Next slide, please. Let's now focus on South Korea, a rising star in the AI landscape. South Korea has set its sights on being one of the top 5 AI powers by 2030. They have a comprehensive AI strategy that's focused on healthcare, manufacturing, and defense. South Korea's strength lies in its public-private partnerships with tech giants like Samsung and Naver, working closely with the government, the country also boosts world-leading 5G infrastructure, which is key to supporting the next wave of AI innovations. South Korea's strategic location between the US and China also gives it a unique position in the global AI race, as it balances both economic ties and geopolitical partnerships. Next slide, please. Now, before we dive into the specifics, let's pause to reflect. What does it really mean for machines to think? And as AI continues to evolve, how can we shape it to ensure it aligns with the future we aspire to? This, I believe, frames the challenges and opportunities AI presents us today. End of a slideshow, please. And with that in mind, I will hand over to our first speaker, Naufal Suryanto. He specializes in AI security and cybersecurity applications with a strong focus on AI robustness and adversarial machine learning. He will take us through the evolution of AI technology and ChatGPT, highlighting the transformative impact of AI adoption and its role in shaping the future. Over to you, Naufal.
Thank you for the opportunity. I will share my screen. Please confirm if you can see my screen.
Yes.
All right. First of all, hello everyone, and thank you for inviting me in this discussion. My name is Naufal, and I'm currently a postdoctoral researcher in Busan National University, South Korea. And today I will bring some brief presentation about the AI evolution, including the ChatGPT, which is the current most advanced models that we use in almost all applications. So the term AI itself is already coined for a long time ago, since the early beginning of the computer era. So Alan Turing has already proposed a method called Turing test for evaluating the machine intelligence. So the test is if the person cannot distinguish the output between machine and human, then it says that the machine itself is passing the Turing test. And then in the next era, the development of expert system is one of the topics for the AI research. But in the early era, the method is for using a rule-based logic. So all the logic is handcrafted and coded such that it can simulate the human decision process. And then there is an era for it's called AI winter. And after that, in 90s, the machine learning has shifted the paradigm from the rule-based system into data-driven approach. So here, the machine can automatically discover the pattern on the code for solving the solution that we want based on the data. So we don't need to code for the logic by ourselves. And then with the increased power of computational power like GPUs, and then the internet that is already widely used, so we can collect a lot of data. And in the 2010s, the deep learning approach become the major breakthrough of the AI, such that it can become the best performance in the models. So yeah, this is one of the major breakthrough, such as ImageNet. It is the dataset for classifying the image with thousands of images, a million of images. And one of the major breakthrough in deep learning is called AlexNet, which is proposed by Jeffrey Hinton, which currently recently just received the Nobel in physics, and he is one of the pioneer in this era. And then after this breakthrough, deep learning progress is very fast, and there are several proposals such as generative adversarial network and variational autoencoder, which revolutionize the generative AI for creating a highly realistic data. And then in 2017, there is one major proposed deep neural network architecture called Transformer, which is proposed by Google teams at the time, and it's currently become the standard for every neural language processing model, such as the ChatGPT itself, which is based on this Transformers architecture. So why it is revolutionize the NLP? Because it can process the large data and have a better understand context in the parallel. And then, in the recent era, in the 2020s, as we know, there are a lot of foundational models and LLMs like ChatGPT, which can solve various tasks with only one single model. And this is the era, this is the current era of AI, which is relied on the foundational models such as ChatGPT. So, one of the major breakthrough in AI is large language model, which is actually the very large neural networks that is trained with very large data and with a very large compute power. And why it is called foundation model? Because it can solve a high variety of tasks with only a single model. And ChatGPT and Google Gemini is one of the examples. So the rest of ChatGPT has started from the early when the ChatGPT itself is released, and for the in South Korea itself, it has the peaks in 2023 in the March. So I take this graph from the Never trend, and currently it's become one of the most queried examples for the AI terms. And ChatGPT can solve a lot of problems itself. And why it is very breakthrough? Because the ChatGPT itself can achieve million users with only 5 days of the release. And in South Korea itself, I found that the recent survey, the ChatGPT has still become a popular application, which has over 3 million monthly users. And ChatGPT is not only the only LLM, and in the South Korea itself, some big company also release their own LLMs. For the example, like in the Never, they release LLMs models for Korean called HyperClova, and also recently LG AI Research also released their open source LLM called Exawan 3.0, which claim to have the global top level performance in open source LLM. And this is the example of the LLM released by the big company. And also there are a lot of company also releasing the model. For example, like there is a model called EV Korean that is released by Yanolja. Yanolja is the app for finding like hotels in Korea, local apps. And also including our lab university also researching on this for developing like cybersecurity based LLM models. So the AI itself already impact a lot of area, and I found that in 2023 there are about 143 AI startups across diverse sectors in Korea, such as healthcare, robotics, education, finance, and etc. And yeah, it is very fast-growing area. But as mentioned earlier, there are several things that need to be considered when with the very rapid development of AI, for example, like bias and fairness, and then the privacy concern, and then the misinformation and deepfakes, which recently also become an issue in South Korea, and then also intellectual property, accountability, and transparency. So yeah, so from the early development of the symbolic AI, which rely on human code, until the powerful model like ChatGPT and other foundational model, AI has drastically transformed the industry and society, and the adoption reshaping all of the factors in the diverse areas such as healthcare, finance, and autonomous driving, and etc. So as the model keep growing, South Korea and the other APEC regions have a chance for leading this AI innovation and developing a responsible governance for shaping the global AI landscapes. Yeah, I think that's all for me. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that insightful look into the evolution of AI and its transformative impact. Now, shifting from the technical side to the policy landscape, we are fortunate to have Jo-Fan Yu, a leading expert in AI governance and regulation, who will share insights on the development of regulation and policy approaches in Asia Pacific and the approach of Taiwan. Over to you, Jo-Fan.
Thank you, Harry, and nice to meet everyone here. It's my pleasure to join this panel to share and exchange views with you. So indeed, AI is the hottest topic. So after the ChatGPT came to the market. So when we talk about AI governance, actually now is the governments plays the most important role. But I think this time is a little bit unique. It's not like, in the past, government usually they just step in when the technology became more mature, thinking about, the internet. So when we think about, the first start of the internet is just, is run by the, engineers, so not the government. But only that after the internet, after several, decades, then the government start to, to step in and to start to, to work together with other stakeholders, to shape, the development and governance and regulations. But this time, I think it's very unique because now, actually, we don't know, we know AI already, have a lot of capability to do a lot of things already, but we don't know how far it will go, we'll go to, like the movie, it's like a Terminators, this kind of scenario, or it just is use of tools. So I think that when we talk about the governance, I think the government actually face the dilemma. I think it's first, they don't know, what is the technology? What is the, how far it will go, and what is the use case? And on the other hand, what is the risk, brought by this technology? So now we have a lot of the imagination, but actually we are not sure if it's true or not. So how can we impose, a regulation based on this uncertainty? I think it's really was a lot of challenges, to the government. So, but now of course, we know that in the world, we have three main models for the data governance. That is the EU model and the US model and also the China model. So the EU model is more focused on the consumer human rights. It's central. And US model is more softer approach, to more business friendly, this kind of model. So the China model will is a more, is to regulate AI more heavily and focus more on the national security risk and also emphasize development. So in addition to these three models, when we look back, I mean, to the Asia, actually we see a lot of different, I mean, pictures. So before, I mean, in the past, we always, I mean, see Asia has the tradition of following the footsteps of EU or US in terms of digital policies. When we think about, the EU GDPR or the DSA, I mean, we can see, some Brussels, I mean, effects, I mean, in Asia. But this time, when we're talking about AI governance, actually we see really different picture in Asia. They are really diverse development that reflect, I mean, different, I mean, like cultures, I mean, technology, I mean, development, also economic situation, the society, I mean, structures and political values. So we have a very different, countries, in the spectrum. So on one side, we can see like a softer, I mean, approach, like also pro, I mean, innovation. I mean, this approach, we can see, like, of course, like Singapore is a really in the leading position. They have a really comprehensive AI strategy. They have a sandbox, and they also have like sector guidelines and framework. And I think they do, pose, I mean, really, leading, I mean, position. But we also see, I mean, Japan and also the Korea. Of course, today we have two Korea experts here. So on this side, we see Singapore and Japan and Korea, actually they have more business friendly, pro innovation approach. But on the other hand, of course, we see China, and they have a really different, just what I mentioned. They focus more on the national security, and also try to regulate AI, heavily. For instance, the AI, the algorithm also required approval from the government, I mean, before it launched. So AI policy actually are part of the state planning. So I think it's on that side, maybe we can also see like the Vietnam, I mean, also focus on how to maintain, I mean, the social order is a priority, and it's more like top down, I mean, this kind of approach. So on the other, I mean, these two different, I mean, end of the spectrum, we can see others in between. So we see Malaysia. Malaysia, we saw, I mean, they also have a lot of ambition. They don't have a comprehensive AI regulatory framework, but they have really started to have like the national AI office. Actually, it's just established in August of 2024. And we also see Indonesia also show, I mean, have the national strategy, and to have a sandbox, and also non-binding guidelines, I mean, to promote the AI development. And we also see the Thailand, they also follow, I mean, they pro the business, but also follow, I mean, the development closely in Europe. So while we have so many diverse, I mean, development in Asia, I think I think we can see still from I mean, the countries, I think they still choose to have more pro-business, pro-innovation, this approach to have non-binding guidelines and wait and see, the development of the technology. I mean, to decide what is the next step. So, but we also can see that actually all the landscape is evolving, because the technology is still developing, and also the impact on the society, and also the cultures and values I think is still uncertain. So we can maybe, I mean, it's difficult to predict what it will, I mean, the AI governance will go, and also maybe it's uncertain. Maybe it will shift really quickly to other side. Is possible. The possible does exist. So maybe I spend a little bit time to talk about Taiwan. Taiwan also started quite early, I mean, to have like a national AI action plan from 2018. But from that time, Taiwan, just like other jurisdictions, focus more on innovation, to have sandbox, to have open AI to promote and to encourage the AI development here. And from the 2023, we have the National AI Action Plan 2.0. and continue focusing on the innovation and also, I mean, to encourage AI application in various areas, including like healthcare and transportation and finance, and also focus on the data governance and also release, I mean, more and more soft guidelines, I mean, for the guidance. So this year, actually, we just released, I mean, the first draft AI Basic Act for the government to include to formulate the basic principle, I mean, for AI development in Taiwan. And then we also see, I mean, the sectors, I mean, starting from this year, to issue the guidelines, such as the financial authority, to issue guidelines for the industry, I mean, sectors. So in general, Taiwan, I think, is still, I mean, take, I mean, the more business friendly and pro innovation, but also try to wait and see. I mean, see how the AI development will go, and then what is the impact. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Jofan, for shedding a light on Asia Pacific's approach to AI governance and the valuable lessons we can take from Taiwan. Now, I'm pleased to have Steve Park as the head of Asia Pacific Public Policy at Roblox and a key advisor to the Korean government. Steve will dive into the challenges and opportunities in shaping AI policies in South Korea and the broader Asia Pacific region. Over to you, Steve.
Thank you, Perry, and it's a pleasure to be here with all of you, as well as looking at these important topics of AI innovation and governance. As Perry mentioned very kindly in the introduction, I wear many hats, and I've served in both the private and public sectors as well as currently. So today, probably I'll be speaking to you more from my public sector experience as an advisor to the Korean government on various topics, rather than as part of Roblox, because these issues are beyond just one company. As many of you are probably aware, that South Korea, like many other countries in the world, is very interested in leading the artificial intelligence sector. Government held the AI Safety Summit in Seoul this past May, and it was one of the early parties to be part of the AI Safety Summit initiative. And there are also, there are 10 AI legislation right now sitting in the Korean National Assembly as we speak, which are all, with varying degrees meant to establish the framework which South Korea can use to build its AI capacity. Most of these bills focus, like other countries and their bills, most of these bills focus on providing the definition, the terminology, the scope, which government entities or quasi-government entities will be created to allow for private and public sector cooperation. They also carve out different regulatory provisions in which the high risk, moderate risk, and low risk AI related systems and providers would have to follow. I guess for those interested more about this topic, it would be interesting to kind of note that the bills in South Korea are different from the EU Act in the sense that they are primarily promotional in their nature. So it is supposed to be promoting the technology, it is supposed to be promoting the industry and its development in South Korea, which goes back to what Joe Fung was talking about earlier, that these countries in East Asia generally tend to have a much more positive view and accepting view of trying to use technologies in comparison to its counterparts in EU or the United States. But that said, there is still a regulatory element to it. But unlike the EU Act, which sort of sets out different degrees of requirements, depending on whether you're a provider of a high risk system or you're a supplier or a developer, there are different requirements that are set out in the EU. But compared to that, the bills in South Korea are more comprehensive. So it doesn't make the distinction of between kind of the provider, the developer, and etc. However, it is very possible that such divisions may come in under the bills once they're passed as part of enforcement decrees, which is quite often what happens in South Korea, where the bill itself might be more of might be more conceptual in nature, and the specifics are offered in the decrees that follow. And generally, there is a bipartisan agreement with the government and the opposition parties in South Korea. And so I would be very surprised if these bills don't get all kind of merged together as a part of, and the committee itself provides a one or two bills as with bipartisan backing. Another aspect, I guess, of this is that South Korea, part of the challenge, I think, and similar with many other markets, is that the government is much more used to leading kind of new technology sector, where the government or the government-backed academia would study these topics first, would become very experienced in, and then you would get the private industry coming in afterwards, where they get a lot of direction and advice from the government. If you look at how South Korea's economy has sort of modernized and improved in the past decades, that's generally been the experience. However, as we all know throughout the world, this is not the case when it comes to digital sector, and particularly not the case for artificial intelligence. We have companies with AI language models that are far more advanced and in their understandings of these issues probably than many public sectors, agents and agencies. And so I think that's probably the challenge. But at the same time, I think the opportunity is there, because we've seen models in places like Japan, Singapore, Taiwan, and other areas where public sector as well as private sector, academia, and civil societies are encouraged to kind of come together as an intersection to provide their insights so that we can build cars, that the often used analogy of building cars with seatbelts at the same time, even if that's quite difficult to do. I guess the other aspect of this is, how can South Korea and kind of the region balance innovation with sort of the public interest, particularly on issues of privacy and ethical standards. For those familiar with the privacy regulations in South Korea, it is probably one of the strongest in the world, and it probably was, it actually had a lot more, um, you know, tougher regulations in place even before GDPR was enacted in Europe, and certainly even in comparison to the US, where it doesn't have a federal privacy bill in place or a law in place. There have been aspects, from something as simple as age assurance to parental consent on data being used, and all these things, concepts have been there and in place. Now, the challenge, I think, is modernizing that as we focus on issues like generative AI, where established concepts of privacy, data, as well as copyrights, trademarks, intellectual property, all those new topics have to be revisited, I think, under the scope of AI, and particularly generative AI. So those are some of the challenges that South Korea is working on, and certainly interacting with the rest of the world. Finally, I think the South Korea is probably going to be establishing its version of AI Safety Institute. I'm not sure what the final term is going to be called, but that institute is probably going to be under the direction of the Science Ministry, probably in cooperation with one of its quasi-governmental organizations like an IT promotion agency or a similar type of organization. So Once that is in place, I would expect South Koreans to be active participants next year in France. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Steve, for that insightful perspective on AI policy and governance. Now that we have heard valuable insights from our speakers, let's dive deeper into the key issues. Let me start with you, Steve. You just mentioned about this national safety. Do we mean safety of people, or is it included national security as well?
That's a very good question. I think, the great thing about AI, particularly generative AI, is that it makes it easier for people to produce and create, even if they don't know coding, even if they did not know certain expertise before. I think the downside, as we all know, is that it also makes bad actors, it helps them to create things that are just as easily. I think from deep fakes to online phishing scams and all those different types of negative activity that we see are areas where artificial intelligence can augment, and it is already being employed to a certain extent in those areas. And so to answer your question, Perry, I think that line of national security and securing and safe and making sure that your nationals are safe, I think that boundary is becoming much more blurred these days.
Thank you. Thank you. Now, I have a broad question which you all kind of touched on, but I want to go deeper in it. In terms of leveraging AI to boost global competitiveness, how would you see it in your country, and what lessons and challenges have emerged from this journey? Who likes to take this question?
Yes, maybe I can start. So I think for Taiwan, I think because of the AI innovation, I think now the focus is still, on the hardware and the manufacturing. So that we have a semiconductors, industries, and which are quite important, to the AI. So, and I think the Taiwan government and also society still focus on, more, this hardware is instead of the services and or AI the products. So we can see a lot of innovations, especially in the technology used for the manufacturing and hardware as well. But also, we see more and more the challenges, that related to, maybe like the energy and also renewable energy. The use of renewable energy, electricity, all this around like manufacturing as well. But on the other hand, we also see some good progress, in certain areas. So in Taiwan, we also, I think especially in the healthcare industries, we see some small, startups, start to provide good, healthcare, AI, services. We also see big hospitals, they also stepping in these areas. So because Taiwan have a relatively good, national, healthcare system, and also that's why we have a lot of the data, because it's a national system. And also we have a good, ICT industry. So that's why, it's good, for the startups, and also maybe the hospital, they work together with the technology industry, ICT industry, to work on the platforms and or products or services, and then they export to the other especially ASEAN countries for profit. So for that, these kind of areas, I think the challenges usually will be, of course, just Steve and also the others that mentioned that, it's a privacy, because all the healthcare data usually is a really sensitive data. And in most of countries, this kind of data is a heavily regulated, we need to have a clear consent and also others as well, requirements as well. And in Taiwan, I think it's also, I mean, the challenge, I mean, for this industry, when they start, I mean, their business, how they, make sure that, I mean, the data, when they collect and use, I mean, and when they, I mean, develop their business model, how they can comply with the privacy, I mean, data protection, I mean, legal regime here, and also in other jurisdictions as well when they export, I mean, their services and products. I think it is a challenge right now for these industries.
Thank you very much, Jeffan. Any other comments? Somebody else wants to kind of look at the context in South Korea?
Maybe I can go give some little bit addition for the technical part, maybe. And one of the common issue, since I also get involved in the practitioner, for example, like applying this AI technology to private sectors. One of the common issue is for localizing this AI, because as we know, like for example, like ChatGPT is using the data which is mostly English, and to make this similar model works to our current country, for example, like in South Korea, we have to adapt this model and learn the technology and how we can improve it specifically for the country use case itself. Yeah.
Thank you very much. One question I have is in terms of, Steve, did you have any comment on this area before I move on?
No, I think I'm good. Yeah.
Okay, so now with geopolitical tensions, sanctions, and trade wars are on the rise, what impact these have on your country's AI industry? Anybody wants to take this question?
I guess I'll start. I think many countries, including South Korea, are closely watching what's going to happen in the US in November. Because I think the direction of the US post that election, I think will have a huge impact on how these countries, including South Korea, interact on the issue of artificial intelligence policy globally, particularly as it relates to trade. I think we're still in stages where I would assume that there would be much more conflicts related to trade over not necessarily goods that are not necessarily related to digital services and artificial intelligence. But at the same time, I think where I see there to be a lot of competition and debate is issue of standards. And particularly as it relates to, back to your point, Perry, that AI is as smart as the data that it gets, cross-border data issues. I think there are a lot of elements in many of the 28 countries that are part of the AI Safety Summit. I don't think a single country has politicians or parties or advocates that would want more data sovereignty in terms of these how we operate. So I think that's going to be a critical issue post-election on how South Korea, as well as other countries in the Asia Pacific region, interact with one another. I think another big issue, which probably Joe Fan can speak more on, is China. China is part of the AI Safety Summit, and they've been a starter member from then on. Is that going to change as geopolitical dynamics happen to become more volatile? I think that's going to have a direct impact on countries like South Korea, Japan, much more traditional allies of the US on this topic, and also happen to be bordering China very closely. Another aspect, I think, is, even though it's not directly related to AI, but pressures may resume on Chinese digital services. We know that January is the date that the U.S. Congress has kind of set for TikTok to be sold to another operator if it wants to continue to operate in the U.S. Would that change? If it doesn't change, would China allow that sort of sale? All these different topics, I think, will have a serious impact on particularly the standards of how AI is going to be written.
Thank you very much, Steve. Indeed, the geopolitical context itself is evolving and it's very fluid. And I think traditional alliances are also now more transactional and opportunistic rather than ideological, which makes the whole thing more volatile. Jofan, would you like to add anything to this conversation?
Yeah, I think I totally agree with Steve. I think Taiwan also have the same, position and also impact as well. And especially, in the past, the China, Taiwan, I think we have really close, trade and business. And we are, the biggest, China was the biggest, the trade partners, in for Taiwan, and we have so many, manufacturing factories. So I think it's all this kind of China-U.S. and tension, and also, after the November, will be the direction will probably, affect, the development of the, the Taiwan, not only, the intelligence, artificial intelligence, but also, overall, the digital, also, all the trade, aspect as well. So I think I share, the Steve's view as well.
Thank you very much. Now, Phil, would you like to talk about the standards from technology's point of view, global standards from technology's point of view?
Yeah, okay. Thank you. So, yeah, one of the major issue in AI, as mentioned earlier, is like the ethical consideration for bias, fairness, privacy, misinformation, and etc. And the other things is to make sure that AI is robust enough to handle. Yeah, AI itself is also vulnerable to various kind of attacks, and to make sure that the deployed AI can be robust under these challenges is one of the important issue that should be raised also before we can deploy the robust AI in critical aspects such as the autonomous driving, healthcare, and another industrial applications. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And I think we talked about this global geopolitical context. One newcomer to this geopolitical context is private sector, acting as an independent agent in many ways. So I want to focus on that one, and maybe Steve could enlighten us more that what role private sector plays in South Korea, and also how do you see it globally? To what extent they are global? To what extent they're national? Thank you, Steve.
Sure. And this is probably something that Nafal could probably speak more on, but generally, if we really, at risk of generalizing things too much here, sorry, there's the hardware part, the software part, and the network part, when it comes to AI. And generally speaking, you need all three to advance to a certain level for there to be growth and prosperity and etc. And what most economists would call a boom that happens when you get those things right. If you look at the private sector right now, the companies that are doing very well are not necessarily the software companies, but more on the networking and the hardware. Because I think private sector, because it's a private sector, you have to think about, where are your profits going to be coming from? If not now, at least in the future, you need to be able to show that to your end customers and investors. And I think it's easier for the market to kind of project as to how many chips will be needed or how much data network will be needed or capacity of cables will be needed because everybody believes, and we all know that we will be using AI a lot more. So it's easier to focus on things like electricity, data centers, microchips, semiconductors. Now, it's a lot harder to kind of figure out where that was going to go in terms of the software part of this. And I think that's probably where the private sector has a role to play the most in the next evolution of AI tech. So it's great that we can use ChatGPT. It's great that we can use Gemini and all these other products, but okay, what is that going to get us? How does that take us to the next step? And I think both governments and societies at large are going to be looking at the private sector to provide that sort of roadmap. I think Nafal talked about in his presentation earlier that it took much, much less time for ChatGPT to reach a 1 million user base. And yes, it's from internet to smartphones to artificial intelligence, particularly generative AI. I think we're looking at this in a way where so how many people are going to be using that and how soon and how explosive is that going to be? But if you kind of think about history and how internet sort of picked up with its economy, a lot of people couldn't predict there would be eBay. That was sort of hard to think about. I mean, I still remember driving to Comp USA and buying a software in a packaged box and taking out floppy disks or a CD and putting that in my computer. I mean, all of that is just history. But so what I want to just kind of hypothesize here, just food for thought probably, is that the private sector will have figured out in the next step, particularly as it relates to software, a new direction of profits, which would probably excite a lot of governments and societies and markets.
Thank you. Before I move to Jofan, I want you to deep dive more into when I talk about private sector, to what extent they are remaining national, to what extent they're decoupling and becoming more global. Steve, to you.
I thought you're giving the question to somebody else. In terms of decoupling, I think particularly the experience with South Korea, you see a lot more offshoring, particularly from the companies that I just talked about that are offering microchips and semiconductor related businesses. They need to invest much more in the US. At the same time, I think while things are getting much more transactional between countries and allies, at the same time, I think private sector is under greater pressure today to kind of identify which side you're on a lot of these conflicts. And if it were up to the private industry, I think we would all prefer the old global trade order of things. But I think we're living in a new world, so decoupling is going to happen as time goes on. And back to what you were saying earlier about geopolitical dynamics after Washington. Whether it's going to they'll have a new leader, whether it's going to be a renewed leader or somebody new, I think is going to be the great question.
Thank you. Jofan, would you like to make comments?
Yeah, I think it's when we think about the private sector, in terms of AI, industry, I think for the hardware, also the network, I think industry right now, I think is the more predictable because they are still operating in the more like a traditional way and doing to have like a technological advancement. But I think now is the challenging. I think is really, for the future, AI industry. Mainly maybe it's a service or software, this kind of business. Industry. So I think for them, I think it's I think until now, I think it's what is the really the good business model, or it's how what kind of product will be be have any potential. I think it's still really But on the other hand, we can see, now is that there's no global, regulatory, regime. Actually, we see a lot of fragmented, and we see more and more, fragmentation. In this all this region, especially I think in Asia, you can see, you cannot really have, maybe you have like ASEAN, this you have like some rough, regulatory regime, but for more in details like a privacy and also other, even like a copyright, this kind of the laws, we see maybe there are more diverse directions, especially in terms of like we're talking about AI. So I think it will pose a lot of challenges to the future AI industry, mainly the software or service, these industries. So but also maybe it's a when you say the challenges, maybe also represent opportunities. So maybe, the company have more like is more creative, to find, the right business model, to overcome or take advantage of this fragmentation, this landscape might, get, the best, result.
Thank you very much. That was great. And Naufal, would you like to make any comments?
Yeah, basically, private sector has a very important role for accelerating the AI application in diverse area, especially with that will be impact in the nationally, and since it will impact nationally, I think it will also have indirect impact for the global competitiveness.
Mm-hmm. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
So I'm going to pose the last question here. I wonder that what are your observations in terms of global collaboration? Are we moving more into bilateral, multilateral, or even a multi-stakeholder model? How do you see the AI governance moving? Maybe I start with Jofan.
I think now maybe we is maybe the old good days have already passed. We cannot see the global the model collaboration. I think it's maybe we cannot see, especially have more tensions, geopolitical tensions around the world. But I think it's from, the current, situation, we can see, like EU, the big market, they have like one, a group, and US as well, and China as well. And in Asia, we see, the ASEAN, and also we can see a lot of different alliance, across different continents. So maybe we can see more bilateral or multilateral, but not global, collaborations. But I think it's a pity because Taiwan, because of the international, the positions, so it poses more challenges to Taiwan, because of these reasons.
Thank you. Steve, do you have any comment to make?
I think, yeah, I agree. The good times are sort of, I think, are past or passing right now. But I think for the next couple of years, if not longer, I think both the private and the public sector will continue to have to figure out where they can find opportunities in bilateral relations or multilateral relations or multipolar or bipolar areas. It's, I think part of the challenge is figuring out, where you can kind of create these opportunities and alliances where you can, and when you can, and trying to avoid being the center of negative attention when there are issues that break out.
Well, just to add a bit of optimism, I would say 2024 wasn't too bad. At least it was better than 2023 because we reached agreement in Global Digital Compact, and there was agreements earlier in the year on security. So let's hope that this kind of positive, collaborative spirit continues into 2025. And on that note, I am going to ask Leonard, maybe he can read 3 questions and our panelists could choose which one they want to answer. Leonard, over to you.
Yes, thank you.
Questions actually posed by the community. Sorry, please, Leonard.
Yeah, so the first question would be, how is South Korea leveraging AI to address national security concerns, particularly in areas like defense and cybersecurity?
If you please read 3 questions and they will choose.
Oh, okay. Then how does AI robustness impact South Korea's ability to compete in the global AI landscape, or Taiwan's? And then how does Taiwan or South Korea balance AI innovation with the protection of individual rights, particularly in terms of data privacy?
Thank you. So anybody likes to answer any of these questions?
So I guess I can start with kind of the military aspect because I also kind of look into that field as well. I think there's 2 areas. So the Korean military has its Defense Innovation 4.0 policy, and that's kind of the integration of artificial intelligence into its current military apparatus. Part of this is establishing the Defense AI Center under the Ministry of National Defense, and also operating kind of a Defense AI and Data Committee, where that committee is supposed to be composed of not just military personnel or government personnel, but also private sector and academia and the technology fields as well. Along with this, each military branch, the Air Force, the Navy, the Marines, the Army, are operating AI integrated military units, and they're testing, how they can best use AI technology to enhance manned and unmanned operations. So that's kind of the military side. Related to that is kind of the intelligence and the counterintelligence work. The National Intelligence Service, which is the Korean version of the CIA, is trying to establish a National Security Technology Research Institute. So the first time the agency is actually trying to create a research as well as a technology agency under its wing, and focusing on AI and quantum computing. So yes, so that area is just as busy as the National Assembly and the Science Ministry.
Thank you very much. Jofan, would you like to answer any of those questions?
Yes, I think maybe I take the last one about the technology balance. The digital rights and also AI development. I think it's the Taiwan government try to to promote more human-centered AI, the governance. But of course I think it's still a lot of challenges, just like for the reasons we just discussed before. So I think the government try to be careful. So they still want to continue really, we call it light touch, approach for now. So they want to have like an issue, like, the guidelines, even when they issued the draft AI Basic Act, they still just include really basic principles, to announce, for others, for all the industry, to follow, but really, it's really rough and basic, So, and also on the other hand, I think the government tried to promote more privacy enhancing technologies. So, they issued the guidelines, to explain various, privacy enhancing technologies, for industry, try to consider and use when they have new projects. And also, actually, Taiwan government also is updating its data protection laws. But with really, careful considerations, not to intervene, the innovation and also the development, AI development here. So I think for the industries, I think they try to use a different projects. They try to to see to utilize all the technology or how to change the business model to make sure that they can to do make their all efforts to comply with the privacy requirements. And also the sandbox is always the option for them. If they have some concerns, and they can go to the sandbox to further discuss with the government how to to preserve protect the privacy as well. So I think it's approach right now taken by the government and the industries.
Thank you very much. Nafal, do you have any, would you like to answer any of the questions?
Sure. I will give my opinion about the impact of AI robustness in country ability. So yeah, I want to emphasize again that AI robustness is the ability to perform well in in various range of unexpected or expected adversarial conditions, and it has a very crucial role because it is related with the trust and resilience and scalability of the deployment in the real applications. So yeah, AI robustness itself has to be verified, especially in the critical sector such as finance, healthcare, or autonomous system, which if there is a false prediction, it can be cause of very fatal consequences. And if this case happen, yeah, it will be, we will not able to trust the AI system itself. And in South Korea itself, for the example, like the Agency of Defense and Development from South Korea is actively collaborating with the academics, and we did some collaboration research for make sure that we can develop robust AI across critical scenario. And yeah, it will, by doing so, we can make sure the AI is deployed for a specific critical security concern. And then the other example is like in industry, for example, like in South Korea, there is a car company such as Hyundai, and yeah, it's currently have level 3 autonomous driving, which is the assistant mode. And yeah, this is crucial. Actually, the research maybe already achieve higher level, but it doesn't deploy because we have to make sure that the AI system is robust enough before we can deploy it in the next level. Yeah, so making sure AI robustness is important, and that's why. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Paul. Now, if everybody could stay 5 more minutes, we have 3 more questions. If not, then I move into our reflections. Could you all stay 5 more minutes?
My apologies. I actually am going to have a hard stop because I have a call right after this.
Okay. In this case, I start with you and your reflection. Would you like to share your reflection on today's discussion?
Certainly. Thank you. I think it's always good to compare and contrast your market situation, particularly as it relates to policy, with other markets and countries. I think there are a lot of similarities that South Korea has with its neighbors in the region, particularly on AI and how we're trying to develop that and strike the right balance between private and public sectors. And at the same time, I think there will be more unique challenges that we also have to think about. As I had mentioned earlier, UAI Act is there, and Korea is building its own, but a lot of it looks similar, but there will be differences as well. So I think those are some of the topics that we have to keep in mind and continue to monitor, and also do what one can, both in whether it's a government or whether it's companies, for what happens after November. And I think a lot of that is, its scenarios are in works in both situations. So I think that's also going to be very interesting to watch. And at the same time, all the while recognizing that AI will continue to become a bigger force in our lives. And to Nafal's point, how can we work to combat some of the ethical issues or the public interest issues that are probably, affecting just about every country. I think those topics are very important.
Thank you very much. And on that note, I move to Nefal for his closing remarks.
Okay, thank you. So as the AI evolution has brought us to this pivotal point, where there's very strong models such as GPT and other foundational model have transformed industry and another application rapidly. Yeah, I think it's still very crucial to prioritize the important topic like ethical governance and responsible AI development. And yeah, by balancing this cutting edge innovation with this truthful regulation, I think together we can ensure the AI benefit for society as well as driving the progress while safeguarding these values. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Nefal. And now over to you, Jofan, for your closing remarks.
Thank you. I think now is really the challenging time, for all of us, but maybe it's also a good time, opportunity for us as well. Although we have all kinds of, tension, especially geopolitical tensions, but actually, when we want to have like a more emergent technology like AI, I think more collaborations is even more, needed. So at the national level, how the government and the private sectors and also other stakeholders work together, to explore, the public-private, model, partnership model, I think is even more important. And also on the international level, I think how to, build up alliance and to work together, I think is also very important. So, we need more, wisdom and then creativity, to overcome all the challenges.
Thank you. Thank you. I believe that we had a very interesting discussion and very insightful comments. So I want to thank you, every one of you. It was a real pleasure moderating this panel. As we conclude today's session, which is part of the Global Technopolitics Forum's Global Dialogue series, it's clear that AI is profoundly reshaping industries, economies, and global power dynamics. I would like to return to a question I raised earlier for reflection. What does it really mean for machines to think? And as AI continues to evolve, how can we shape it to align with the future we aspire to? The road ahead is uncertain, but I'm confident that through open dialogue and meaningful collaboration, especially crucial in today's complex geopolitical landscape, we can guide AI to serve the greater good, prioritizing human well-being, fairness, and responsibility. This is precisely the mission we pursue at the forum. And on that note, a heartfelt thank you to our panelists, support team, participants, and the University of Southern California. A special thanks to the Pacific Century Institute for their ongoing support of our work. Together, let's keep shaping a future where AI works for all of us. With that, I will hand it over to our chairman, Professor Traverton, for his final reflections. Thank you.
Thanks, Pari. Let me first of all thank you and the participants for a wonderfully rich conversation. Let me also thank again our sponsors, particularly the Pacific Century Institute, but also the University of Southern California for making this possible, with a particular focus on East Asia and South Korea. I think we've driven home the point that who leads in AI is going to lead in the global economy. This all takes place in the context of the increasing Sino-American competition, which runs through many issues, including AI, though there are bases, it seems to me, for the US and China to cooperate, since they both want to avoid the most extreme bad outcomes that could happen from AI. We know the private sector, and the conversation underscored it, we know the private sector is driving this. The history of AI is interesting. I had thought 50 years ago that AI was the technology of the future and always would be, but now it's with us in spades for good, I think, especially, but also some possible ills out there. The conversation identified 3 different models of thinking about AI and AI governance. One in Europe, which is focused on human rights. One in the United States is much more promotional, private sector driven, and then China, which insists on controls for national security purposes. South Korea, in particular, tends to be in the promotional act, trying to make the best of its success in artificial intelligence. It's integrated in South Korea's military. There is, I think, finally running through all of this, the great tension between the national and the global. All of the countries, particularly those niches that we talked about, have big aspirations, big hopes for AI in their own countries. On the other hand, we recognize that it is necessary, imperative to have a global conversation about AI and how it's governed. As we've said many times, wonderful things will come from it. It can do amazing things, but there are also dangers out there, and therefore the conversation we've engaged in today, but needs to be expanded across the world to decide what kinds of ways we might govern, probably not regulate, but govern in some respects, AI is imperative. Now, that's for me the biggest thing I take away from today's conversation. And again, thanks to all those who made it possible.